Hi, my name is Carolyn Satov. I'm a third-year political science student. I, similar to you, have a vision of Canada leading innovation and cooperation internationally, but I have a question regarding the Arctic that has domestic and foreign issues. First one, you spoke on the 14th of September regarding your relationship with the Arctic people and creating more infrastructure up there. And I feel as far as your environmental platform, some things I'm kind of confused. I think there's some contradictions. On 26th of November, you broke out your Northern Strategy with your 3 objectives. And these all have to deal with adapting to climate change, dealing with increased traffic in the Arctic, as well as preparing Arctic and Indigenous peoples to development and progress. And I guess my concern regarding that is with our energy and with our environment and your rigorous scientific goals, by increasing productivity and increasing certain types of development, these goals, I guess, are put at risk. And I was just wondering, not just about sustainable living, but self-sustainable living for Canada and creating a self-sustaining Canada. I mean, with your Arctic mandates and your environmental ones, I feel that they cross the road.
Okay. I always get a slight chill of apprehension when someone begins a question saying, on the 14th of September you said, and then on the 27th, no, I don't mean to make fun of it. I'm very flattered that you've taken the trouble to track down all the many statements that I've made, and you are raising an issue, which is whether there's a contradiction between a line which is saying we've got to go for productivity, we've got to go for growth, we've got to go for economic development, and protecting the environment, and protecting in particular the Arctic. My view of the Arctic is that this is one of the great emerging Canadian frontiers, and it's not a question of if there's going to be mining development, mining exploration, fossil fuels exploration in the Arctic and in the oceans. And it's not a question of whether there will be traffic in the Northwest Passage, it's a question of when. It's just, I have to deal with the world as it is, not as the world I wish it were. That's what's going to happen. This is an area where there is going to be an enormous pressure on the natural environment for mining exploration and development. There's going to be lots of traffic in the Northwest Passage. Canada has to defend its sovereignty. Canada has to work with Arctic partners to figure out the rules for transit of the Northwest Passage. And by rules, I mean what happens if there's an oil spill? What happens if a ship goes down? What happens if ships break down and people need to be rescued? Canada needs to exert its sovereignty, and it needs to exert its authority there. Stephen Harper is saying Arctic sovereignty is a military question. I'm saying it's also a diplomatic question.
I'm not questioning the diplomacy or the military importance, I guess, related to the Arctic. But one of the things that with your energy plan and with all the initiatives that you're speaking of, you're dealing with the sources of energy, but you're not dealing with the massive amounts of demand that we have. And as Canadians, we use entirely too much energy in our daily activity. And not only looking at what kind of sources we're getting, but how we distribute and how we organize that, I mean, it is more almost fundamental to where we're getting it from. It's how we're using it and what we're doing with it.
I think an answer about 15 minutes ago was saying we've got to get our energy use down. Every unit of output, we need to be more efficient, and we need a national strategy on energy. And I hope that begins to answer some of your questions. Thanks for the question. Let's keep, we got a big queue here, so I'd like to do a couple more if we can, and I'll try and be a little more concise.
All right, I'll try and be brief as well. My name is Harrison Nisnik. I'm in the second year in the Arts and Science program. My question is actually about climate change and the follow-up to Copenhagen as well. I know you've outlined a number of reforms that you think would help lower Canada's greenhouse gas emissions. But I'm thinking more specifically, how does the Liberal government plan to work with the other parties in the Canadian government to make sure that Canada is in a position to commit to binding targets, the necessary binding targets in the sort of post-Copenhagen climate change deal bill that's projected to be brokered in about a year's time?
My view of this is that, first of all, we got to stop waiting for Barack Obama and Waxman Markey. We got to stop thinking that climate change policy in Canada is basically going to be written in Washington. That's the first move. We need to have a federal government that sits down with the provinces and says, let's write the rules of the road. I talked to the oil sector. The oil sector, interestingly, is prepared to live with carbon constraints. What they're saying is, give us the damn rules. We'll play by the rules and we'll adjust our investment strategies accordingly, but we're living in a vacuum. The vacuum created by the absence of leadership by Stephen Harper. So I'm saying let's Canada step into the vacuum, set the targets, set the mandatory emission limits that we think this industry has to live by, right? Then begin to incentivize carbon sequestration, capture, all the stuff we need to do to get those emissions down. That's the first thing. The second thing is we need to get our house in order. The other alibi we keep doing, our first alibi has been we can't do anything until the Americans do. And then our second alibi is we can't move until we get an international framework treaty, for heaven's sake. I don't mean to be super skeptical about Copenhagen and Kyoto, but it wasn't a terrific success, and it wasn't, right? And all the countries are doing the same thing. It's like that old French comedy routine, après vous, Alphonse. No, après vous, Gaston, you know? We're all waiting for someone to go through the damn door, right? And what I'm saying is that Canada should go through the door. And one of the things that is inflicting enormous damage on our international prestige is we're not going through the door. And so I think we need to act. And I think we can act. I think it's realistic to do so. And it's not going to shut down the darn economy. That's the other thing we keep saying.
Hello, my name is Chris Martin, and I'm one of the vice presidents here at McMaster for the Student Union. And my job essentially is representing students to the provincial and the federal government. And this year, that job got a lot harder because of exactly what we talked about before. Credible student representation needs to be backed up by research. And a good number, most of the research we use came from bodies like the Canadian Millennium Scholarship Foundation, the Canadian Council for Learning, which are both gone this year. Which means that next year we're basically operating in a research vacuum. And that poses huge problems for students being able to get up and represent ourselves credibly. So what are we going to do to fill this gap?
That's an important point. You can't run post-secondary education policy. You can't run any kind of policy if you're flying blind. Stephen Harper's cuts to the Canadian Council of Learning, the abolition of the Millennium Scholarship, the point that people don't realize about the Millennium Scholarship is had a very formidable, the Millennium Foundation had a formidable research component. We can't get national policy. We don't know who's getting PSE and who's not getting PSE. All those numbers that I've been quoting to you for the last hour about kids who haven't completed high school, and Aboriginal kids who haven't got high school, and people who haven't got beyond third degree literacy, you know where that comes from? That comes from the Canadian Council on Learning, right? I mean, I can't see anything unless I've got some darn numbers. And Harper's cutting them all. Big mistake. Oh, what can I say to you? We've got to put them back. We've got to put them back so that you have the numbers. So when you come to see me, we're talking the same numbers. So we know what the hell we're looking at. This government doesn't believe in science-based or evidence-based public policy. They believe in ideologically based public policy. And that is a fundamental difference between me and them.